Here's what nobody tells you about saving $50,000. You work toward that number for years. You skip things. You say no to things. You watch it climb from $12,000 to $19,000 to $31,000. And finally, like it crosses $50,000. And for about 4 seconds, you feel incredible. And then immediately, like clockwork, a cold little voice in the back of your head goes, okay, but now what? So you do what any reasonable person does when they're overwhelmed by a decision that feels too important to get wrong. You do nothing. You close the banking app. You tell yourself you'll figure it out next weekend, and then next weekend becomes next month, and next month becomes next year, and your $50,000 is still sitting in the same account, earning the same 0.01% interest, while inflation quietly, patiently, methodically steals $1,500 from you every single year without making a sound. My name is Nick, and today we're going to talk about the exact order of operations that turns $50,000 into the foundation of real, lasting wealth. Because the window between saving this money and doing something intelligent with it is shorter than most people think. I want to introduce you to two people. We'll call them Alex and Jamie. Same age, 30, same school, similar fields, similar salaries. And at the start of 2024, they both crossed the same milestone, $50,000 saved. Alex felt overwhelmed. The market seemed volatile. There were too many options: Roth IRA, index funds, 401k, high yield savings, maybe real estate. And the fear of picking the wrong thing felt worse than picking nothing at all. And so Alex left the $50,000 in a Chase savings account earning 0.01% and decided to think about it more seriously next year. Jamie felt overwhelmed too, but Jamie followed a simple framework and put that $50,000 to work within 3 weeks. We're going to come back to Alex and Jamie throughout this video, because by the end, the gap between what happens to those two people from the exact same starting point is one of the most clarifying things you'll see in personal finance. And chances are, right now, you're closer to Alex than you'd like to admit. There's a concept in behavioral finance called loss aversion, proven by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman. The finding: the pain of losing money is roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining the same amount. When you're sitting on $50,000, losing $10,000 doesn't feel like losing 20% of your saving. It feels like losing 40% of your sense of security. Your brain isn't broken. It's just running ancient software designed to protect you from predators, not optimize a brokerage account. This is exactly why the most dangerous thing you can do with $50,000 is nothing. Because doing nothing doesn't feel like a decision, it feels like caution, but mathematically it's a slow bleed. US inflation has averaged around 3% over the last decade. Your Chase savings account pays 0.01%. That gap is quietly eating your money every year, about $1,500 in purchasing power annually without a single notification on your phone. After 10 years of doing nothing, your account still says $50,000, but it can only buy what $37,000 could buy when you started. You didn't blow the money on anything. You were just cautious, and caution cost you $13,000. That's what's happening to Alex right now, every single day. And the really insidious part is that Alex feels responsible, even disciplined, for not doing anything reckless. But there's nothing disciplined about letting a bank quietly profit off your hard work while inflation does the rest of the damage. Inaction has a price tag. It's just an invisible one, and invisible price tags are the most expensive kind. So let's build the framework. And before we get into it, this isn't complicated. The financial industry has a vested interest in making you think managing money requires expertise, constant attention, and preferably a paid advisor. It doesn't. The actual playbook for $50,000 is straightforward enough to explain in a YouTube video, which should tell you everything you need to know about how much of the complexity out there is manufactured. The first move is the one everyone knows about and almost nobody does correctly: emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of living expenses kept somewhere liquid. If your monthly costs are around $3,500, that's $10,500 to $21,000 that needs to be accessible at any moment. for a job loss, a medical bill, a car that decides to become a very expensive lawn ornament. Most people keep this money in a regular savings account at a big bank. And here's where you should get a little annoyed on your own behalf. As of early 2026, the best high-yield savings accounts are paying between 4.0% and 4.21% APY, FDIC insured, just as safe as Chase and openable online in about 10 minutes. On a $15,000 emergency fund, that's $600 a year in completely passive, completely risk-free interest. Your big bank at 0.01% earns you $1.50. $1.50 per year for $15,000. That's not a rounding error. That's a bank charging you for the privilege of holding your money while paying you essentially nothing for it. A Santander survey found that 69% of Americans don't use higher rate accounts, not because they're unavailable, not because they're complicated, just because nobody told them to. Jamie moved the emergency fund to a high-yield savings account on day one. That single decision earned $600 in the first year, while Alex's $15,000 generated enough interest to buy a large coffee. One large coffee for the whole year. And look, a coffee isn't nothing, but it's also not a financial strategy. Move 2 is the only guaranteed double-digit return available to a regular person, and a staggering number of people walk away from it every year. If your employer offers a 401k match and you are not contributing enough to capture the full match, stop reading this and go fix that right now. A 100% employer match on the first 4% of your salary is a 100% instant return before your money has done a single thing. If you earn $75,000, that's $3,000 per year, free, that your employer is legally offering you in exchange for one mildly annoying HR task. A Vanguard study found that some employees walk away from up to $5,000 per year in matching contributions because enrollment felt overwhelming. $5,000 a year left on the table, compounding at 7% for 30 years is over $500,000 gone. Because the paperwork felt like a lot on a Tuesday, capture every dollar of the match, no exceptions, today. Step 3, your debt situation determines your next move. If you're carrying credit card debt at 20%, 22%, 24% APR, and the national average is above 21% right now, paying that off is mathematically a better investment than anything the stock market can offer you. The S&P 500 has returned about 10% annually over the long run. Paying off a 22% credit card is a guaranteed, risk-free 22% return. There is no investment on earth that offers you a guaranteed 22%. Not index funds, not real estate, not whatever someone on TikTok is pitching this week. Kill the high-interest debt first. Student loans in the 5 to 7% range are a genuine judgment call. Under 5%, prioritize investing. Above 7%, prioritize payoff. Between 5% and 7%, pick whichever one you can actually stick to, because the best financial plan is the one you don't abandon 8 months in when you get tired of it. And if you're sitting there with no high-interest debt at all, congratulations. You get to skip this step entirely and move straight to the part where your money starts compounding. Step 4 is where $50,000 starts doing something genuinely remarkable, and it involves a tax benefit that the government is, for once in its life, being almost embarrassingly generous about, the Roth IRA. In 2026, you can contribute $7,500. You put in after-tax dollars. Everything grows completely tax-free, and when you pull it out in retirement, you owe the government nothing. Zero. On potentially hundreds of thousands in gains. The IRS just lets you keep it. Here's why this is so powerful right now specifically. Most people watching this are in the 12% or 22% federal tax bracket. You pay taxes at those rates today. Your money grows for 3 or 4 decades, and you never pay taxes on the growth. Ever. Roth is paying a small tax bill today to avoid a much larger one later. It's like locking in a low price before inflation drives it up. And if you're thinking, I'll just do a traditional IRA and deal with the taxes later. Later, if this whole plan works, you'll be in a higher bracket. That's the goal. Paying taxes on growth when you're wealthier than you are today is not the flex most people think it is. And the math, Jamie took $7,500 from that $50,000 and maxed a Roth IRA invested in a simple S&P 500 index fund. At 30 years old, left untouched until 60, at the market's historical average of 10% nominal return, that $7,500 becomes approximately $130,000, tax-free. All of it. Alex's $7,500 is still in a Chase account that's earned $2.25 since we started talking. Step 5, increase your 401k contributions beyond the match and let the IRS accidentally help you get rich. In 2026, you can contribute up to $24,500 to your 401k. Every dollar comes out pre-tax. If you earn $80,000 and contribute $15,000, you only pay income tax on $65,000 that year. Depending on your state, that saves you $2,000 to $3,500 annually. Money that would have gone to the government going directly into your retirement account instead. The government is subsidizing your wealth building, which feels like something they didn't mean to do, but here we are. Step 6, and this is the one that genuinely surprises people, the health savings account is the most powerful retirement account in the US tax code, and almost nobody is using it correctly. If you're enrolled in a high deductible health plan, an HSA offers a triple tax advantage. Contributions are tax deductible, growth is tax-free, withdrawals for medical expenses are tax-free. In 2026, you can contribute $4,400 as an individual. Here's the move most people don't know. Pay your current medical expenses out of pocket, invest the HSA money in index funds, keep your receipts, and years later, reimburse yourself tax-free from an account that's been compounding for a decade. It functions like a stealth Roth IRA with an extra tax deduction on the front end. Most people use their HSA like a debit card for copays, which is the financial equivalent of using a Ferrari to go to the grocery store. If there's still money left from your $50,000 after all of that, here's what to actually invest it in. And this is where the financial industry really doesn't want you to hear what I'm about to say. Keep it simple. Aggressively, deliberately, boringly simple. The SPIVA scorecard tracks how professional fund managers perform against their benchmark index every year. Over 15 years, more than 90% of actively managed funds underperform the index they're trying to beat. Over 20 years, it's closer to 95%. These are people with Ivy League, MBAs, Bloomberg terminals, teams of analysts, and 95% of them over 20 years lose to a fund that just owns everything and charges you almost nothing to do it. The entire active management industry is built on the premise that expertise beats simplicity. The data says it doesn't, and the data has been saying this for decades. Warren Buffett bet $1 million on this. A hedge fund manager took the other side, certain that professional money managers would beat a simple S&P 500 index fund over 10 years. Result, the index fund returned 125.8%. The hedge funds averaged 22%. Buffett donated his winnings to charity and has since said he wants 90% of his wife's inheritance in a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. The greatest investor who ever lived, pointing at the boring index fund for his own family. That tells you everything. The simplest approach, a 3-fund portfolio. VTI at 0.03% expense ratio, VXUS at 0.07%, BND at 0.03%, at 30 years old, something like 70% US stocks, 20% international, 10% bonds. Or just buy a target date fund and let it rebalance automatically. The expense ratio difference alone, an active fund at 0.60% versus an index fund at 0.03% on $50,000 over 30 years costs you roughly $134,000 in fees, not in returns, in fees, just for the privilege of having a manager who will, statistically speaking, underperform anyway. Here's what I need you to understand before we get to the end of this, because everything we've covered, the HYSA, the Roth IRA, the index funds, none of it matters if you get this part wrong. The biggest threat to your $50,000 is not a market crash. It's not inflation. It's not a bad fund selection. it's you. Dalbar's annual investor behavior report found that in 2024, the S&P 500 returned 25%. The average equity investor returned 16.5%. That 8.5 percentage point gap gone, not because of bad fund choices, but because of emotional decisions. Buying high, selling low, waiting in cash for the right moment while the market quietly recovered without them. JP Morgan calculated that missing just the 10 best trading days over 20 years cuts your portfolio value by more than half. And 7 of those 10 best days historically happen within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. The people who sell during the panic sell right before the recovery, every single time. They experience all of the fear and none of the reward. Think about what that actually means in human terms. Someone watches the market drop 15% over 3 weeks, convinces themselves this time is different, and sells everything to wait it out, and then watches helplessly as the market recovers 20% over the next 2 months while their money is sitting in a money market account doing nothing. They didn't lose money to the market, they lost money to the mirror. And the brutal irony is they'll do it again next time because the emotions that caused it don't go away just because they've experienced the consequences once. The solution is almost insultingly simple. Automate it. Set up automatic contributions to your 401k, your Roth IRA, your brokerage account. Pick a simple allocation, then stop looking at it. Morningstar found that investors in target date funds, the most boring hands-off option available, left only 0.4 percentage points per year on the table through bad timing versus 1.2 points for investors in more complex funds. The more decisions you give yourself the opportunity to make, the worse your returns get. Automation doesn't just save you time, it saves you from yourself. Let's go back to Alex and Jamie. It's now 5 years later, 2029. Alex's $50,000 is worth $52,500 nominally. The HYSA earned a little eventually, but in real purchasing power, it's closer to $45,000 after inflation. Alex is still waiting for the market to settle down. The market has not settled down. The market never settles down. That's not how markets work. Jamie's picture looks different. The emergency fund has earned over $3,600 in HYSA interest. The Roth IRA contribution has grown to roughly $12,000. The 401k stacked with employer matching and additional contributions sits at over $60,000. The taxable brokerage account has grown to around $25,000. Jamie's $50,000 has become, to cross all accounts, something closer to $100,000 without a single risky bet, without a side hustle, without any special knowledge. Just a framework, executed once, then automated, same starting line. 5 years, one of them doubled their money, the other one is still thinking about it. And here's the thing that makes this genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. Alex is not stupid. Alex is not lazy. Alex is just a perfectly normal person who let the fear of doing the wrong thing talk them out of doing anything at all. And that is statistically the most common financial mistake made by people who have already done the genuinely hard work of saving money in the first place. Charlie Munger spent decades studying what separates people who build wealth from people who don't. And his most famous observation about this exact stage of the journey was blunt. The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. You're halfway there. Once you hit $100,000 invested, the math starts working for you. At 7% annual returns, that's $7,000 per year in passive gains without you lifting a finger. The second $100,000 arrives faster than the first. The third, faster than the second. That's not motivational language. That's just compound interest doing what compound interest does when you stop interrupting it. The people who turn $50,000 into $500,000 are not smarter than Alex. They didn't get lucky on a stock pick. They just made a decision at the exact moment you're at right now, when every instinct said, wait, be careful, not yet. And they acted anyway, systematically, patiently, boringly. The emergency fund, the employer match, the Roth IRA, the 401k, the index funds, automated, left alone. That's the whole playbook. Don't be Alex.